Okay everyone, in this video I'm going to show you guys two different techniques that should be helpful in your retouching project. The first one, so we have, hopefully you've downloaded the files that should be available underneath this video here, and once you've decompressed them and opened them up, you'll see you have only two images. This second one here I'm going to just use as an example, but for we're actually going to be going from the bottom up this time. So drag down your tree in the field, and once again make sure you're dragging it to the one that says Photoshop. Click on that, drag that down there. Don't drag it right into the actual canvas itself. Now context aware is pretty magical. What it'll allow you to do, and I'm just going to show you by a demonstration, I'm going to use the lasso tool, which I know is not a tool we use very much in class, but it can be helpful. And here I'm just going to kind of roughly outline this tree here. Get that little bit under there. Okay, now if I hold down Shift and delete, I'll get up this little menu here, and we're going to choose context aware. All of these options should be fine, and when we hit OK, watch what happens. It's going to think for a little bit, and then if we hit Command D to deselect, you can see it's pretty amazing. It gets rid of the tree completely. And if we zoom in, you can kind of see what's happening. There's a little bit of a weirdness right here, but it's kind of taking some kind of texture and images from around the area. You can see here it's kind of taking this section and putting it over here and filling it in. Now you can see it's did a really nice job with the sky, but there's a little bit of weirdness here. So after you use context delete, it's not like a magic bullet. A lot of times you're going to have to go in and maybe clean things up just a little bit. So I'm going to use my clone tool, clone stamp tool right here, and just kind of even this area out a little bit, holding down Option. Just going to kind of fade these two in just a little bit. Get rid of that area. Just kind of click there so it looks a little bit more even and naturalistic. All right, so this is not a magic bullet, as I said. It usually works very, very nicely for landscapes and areas such as this, but when it first came out, that's why I have the second one here. One of the first things people did, even when it was in beta, was they wanted to see if you could, because it's the internet, remove clothes from, in this case, Olivia Munn, and you can see that they selected her dress right here, use content aware, and oh my god, instead we have like this scary monster. But this is really a nice option because it does kind of show you what, let me go to another thing here so we aren't, but you can see kind of what it does. It's basically finding that texture here of her clavicles and her cleavage, and it's sort of basically added those in over top. So once again, Photoshop doesn't really know what a breast would look like or what things would look like underneath that. It's just kind of working with texture and skin tones. So it's not 100% accurate. It's not going to do exactly what you expect, but it can give you some really nice results. All right, I'm going to close that up, and now we're going to learn something else, which is known as frequency separation. So I'm going to go back into my Finder here, and I'm going to use this picture of Keira Knightley. Drag that once again down to our icon. Now, frequency response is a technique that is used a lot to kind of smooth out blemishes. So you can see here we've got some blemishes in the face, some pimples and stuff on her face. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go through and basically separate the texture layer from the color layer so we can work on those separately. I've got the step-by-step instructions on how to do this listed in the notes section of our VEDT website, but I'll also try to go through this quickly. Now, one of the things we can do, there's this option that says actions here. Actions allow you to actually go through and record things that you do often. So we're actually going to, just to show you this neat little trick, to have this all set up as opposed to remembering this all the time, I'm going to create a new action. So we're going to click here in Actions, and right here, this is sort of Adobe's default icon for create new. So we're going to create a new action. When we do that, you can see, oops, that we'll get this little window up here. We'll call this just to make it quick, frequency sep. You can put this in a different action. And then when we hit record, this little record button starts up. What this means is it's going to record every single action that I do. So first we're going to go into our layers and we're going to create a new layer. So I'm just going to drag that down. I've created a secondary layer. Let's name these. So the top layer I'm going to call texture. And then this bottom layer, I'm going to name it color. This process is destructive, so just be aware of that. You might want to make a backup image just to be safe. So we're going to select the color layer and we're going to go up to filter and blur, Gaussian blur. And once again, this is the reason why we want to make sure that we have a copy of the original available. And we're going to, once that pops up, did that work? Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. There we go. And now, as we kind of learned about before, we can kind of move through here and change this. Now, let me just turn this other option off here. So I'm clicking that off so that we can see this. Blur, Gaussian blur. All right, and now we just want to blur this just slightly. We don't want to blur it so much that the eyes are out of focus, but and actually what we'll do is we'll go over to the eye there so we can see it. We just want to blur it enough that it kind of softens up some of these items here, some of the skin tones and stuff like that, the blemishes. All right, so we're going to do that. Then we're going to click on the texture layer. We'll turn that back on. And we're going to go to image up here. And then there is an option that says apply image. All right. And this is sort of the secret sauce that makes this work. So with this box, it's going to show up here. We're going to change a few things. So we want to make sure where it says source that we are using our source file. Under the layer, we want the color layer. So we're going to go down here and choose color. And under blending, we're going to use not multiply, but subtract. So we just learned about these blending layers. They're pretty much the same thing. We're going to choose this option that says subtract. Now that's going to make things look a little bit weird. Don't worry. Opacity, we want to make sure it stays at 100. And then this is the stuff where I learned this off of the internet. I can't tell you the exact reason why these work, but they do. So scale, we're going to do 2. And then offset, this is right here. We're going to change that to 128. All right. And then we should make sure that preserve transparency, that is unchecked. All right. So then we're going to hit OK. All right, so you can see that there is a slight bit of texture here. You can still see that where that texture exists. And this is going to be the thing that kind of brings that texture back in there. All right, so now to kind of get rid of this and blend these two together, we're going to use that blending mode. And here we're going to use an option that is called linear light, which is right here. Okay, so now things look a little bit more normal. We don't have that strangeness or anything like that. And then if we want to, we can kind of put these two together to kind of clean things up. All right. So that has set everything up. So we're going to go into our actions here and we're going to stop that. And now if we were to go through, it would go through and do all of this for us. If I just select that and hit play. But we're not going to do that now. So that was just kind of a cool way of kind of setting all that up. So if we want to work with color, we're going to select the color layer. All right. And then we're going to click on the lasso tool and right here, we're going to set the feathering before we make our selection. So you can press the Q button quickly to go into quick mask mode and check the feathering. So let's just double click here. All right. And see up here where it says feathering? We're going to click on that. And we'll set that maybe to, let's say 30 or something like that. All right. So now if I were to select around this eye or whatever, when we go into quick mask mode by pressing Q, you can see that now it's got kind of a weird mask around it. Let me make that a little bit easier. I don't know why I had it on red. So, okay, so now you can kind of see that. And once again, remember, I really like to be able to paint mine in. Yours might look like this, but either way, you can kind of see the feathering that you have. And that's going to be important for what we're doing. We'll hit Command D to deselect that, or Control D if you're using a PC. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to use the lasso tool, and we're going to find areas where there is maybe some ruddiness in the cheek. So let's say like this cheek right here. There's a little bit of difference in color, so that's what we're looking for, is kind of to clean this color up. We're going to select that. I'm going to go to my filter. Once again, make sure that you're on the color layer. I'm going to go to my filter. I'm going to use my Gaussian blur. So blur, Gaussian blur. And then you guys can see as I blur this out, it still keeps a lot of the texture that we had in there. Hit OK. You can still see that the texture, if we zoom in, is still there, but it's kind of cleaning up some of these color items. So if I go here, and once again, I'm kind of doing this with a little bit of a stronger hand than I would expect you guys to. Filter, blur, and you can also just, if you want to just apply the same exact blur, you can just click that. But you can see here, if you look, we still have a texture in the face. There's still that texture there, but the color itself is becoming a little bit cleaner and stuff like that. So this is good for blotchiness in skin and stuff like that. Once again, a lot of people nowadays are going through and they're using this a little bit more than it needs to. All right, you can kind of see that really soft, ghosty look that we're getting. Now let's go and look at texture. All right, so we're going to select the texture layer, which is that gray layer. And then we can kind of go through and using the clone stamp tool, we can kind of go through and clean up some of the issues with texture without worrying about things. So for instance, let's say that there's a lot of pimples up here. We want to kind of use maybe the texture from her cheek. Once again, making sure we're there. Using that clone stamp tool. There it is. Just going to use the texture from her cheek here, holding down Option. And once again, what we're doing is we're actually working on this layer. So you can kind of see what's happening there. So right there, and then I can just kind of, and once again, I'm going to zoom in so you guys can kind of see what's happening. This will soften that area up. All right. So this is a great way to kind of add texture from one section to another. So that is what's known as frequency separation. It's a technique that is used a lot today. And like I said, I think especially if we work on the color area here, I think what a lot of people do, which I think is kind of yucky, is they sort of select, and I'm going to go kind of crazy here, but I feel like they kind of just select just about everything that is skin tone. We can also just do this by selecting the skin tone, but I don't know, for whatever reason I'm doing it the dumber way, and I thought it would be quicker. Right there, I'm going to hold down Option to subtract around the nostrils and the lips, but pretty much, yeah, they select everything but that. And then they just go into their filter with Gaussian blur and I think they really just push this hard, which I think sucks, but that's just me. You'll see a lot of images very much like that, where it has that weird kind of blurriness quality to it, but still some texture throughout. So that is frequency separation. We've also learned a little bit about the dangers and comedic value of a very useful tool, which is content-aware delete. I hope that both of these are helpful for you in your work on your project. And as always, if you have any questions, just email me, guys, on the site. Okay, have a great day, and I'll see you all soon.